Violence erupted in Leeds in the United Kingdom as rioters set ablaze a bus, overturned a police vehicle and even pelted stones at cops. The chaos began after social services removed 4 children from a reportedly Romanian family after the 5th child, a young infant, was reportedly seen with head injuries. So they removed the other children and took them into government aided child care. Eyewitnesses said that some of the people from the community responded by setting fires and throwing stones, but then it just snowballed into something far more diabolical and dangerous. And you can see this, and they say that it is not just a micro community. This region in Leeds is home to immigrants, especially a lot of them from the subcontinent, Pakistan, and some of the other nations in South Asia. And the larger question is, did this all have a certain color? Because the hint towards a micro community was made, but then thereafter we had some British MPs come out and say that it has got a snowballing or a spillover of subcontinental politics. Are they linked to a particular nation? That's the big question. But as the violence ensued, British politician Nigel Farage claimed that politics of the subcontinent is to be blamed. He said, and I quote him, that politics of the subcontinent are currently playing out on the streets of Leeds. Let's understand from Sanjay Suri that what's the true story. Did others piggyback on an issue that a family from a micro community, reportedly Romanian, had, and did that then snowball into somebody else co-opting it for venting out themselves on the streets of the United Kingdom in Leeds?
To an extent, without doubt, Anand, because as you were reporting, this began with an issue with a Romanian family, and the official word is that it started as a family matter, and there was an immediate protest from the Romanian community. And we have to bear in mind that the Roma that this lot originally is, and they've come from Romania primarily, is a community that is in a good deal of trouble and controversy all around Europe, and they have a hard time of it wherever they go. But really the heart of the issue is without doubt immigration. That led the
Sanjay, we've just suddenly lost your audio. From the source itself, we seem to have lost your audio. So from the part where you said that Roma and this community is infamous all across Europe, we lost your audio. We've got it back. Please continue.
Yes, I wouldn't say infamous, I would say they are controversial. And also as an immigrant community, they have a hard time of it just about everywhere. And in this instance, when you had the 4 children taken away by the Social Security, in the immediate instance, we had a lot of people from the Roma community, Romanians as well, who gathered around to protest. But that didn't quite explain the extent of the violence we saw and how long it continued, much through the night. This is also, this Hare Hill area is home to a very large immigrant community. A lot that you were quite rightly saying is from the subcontinent. A fairly high number of Bangladeshis and Pakistanis in this area, and a number of them also joined in. They have issues of their own. One common to other migrants, this is an area of deprivation, but also there is a wider and a deeper underlying political issue, and there has been a lot of unrest within the community here over Labour Party's Gaza policy. They say that Labour and the Labour government has not condemned Israel as strongly as they would like to see it condemned, and that reflected in a significant vote away from Labour in the elections that we've just seen. So there is a good deal of political anger that also is underlying in this community, and to an extent there was a spillover of that as well.
Was there a Bangladeshi reference to this? Was there a Bangladeshi angle to this entire thing? Because there are some who have also said the subcontinent. Why would the Indian subcontinent be mentioned by people like Nigel Farage? There are others who have reportedly said that there was Bangladeshi ire or angst because of what's happening in Dhaka and in Bangladesh, and that spilled over into the streets of Leeds.
Well, Nigel Farage, of course, is a member of parliament whose views need to be taken in a certain context. He is right of right wing, so he sort of fired his message from the hip, saying it was subcontinental. But no doubt there is a significant population here from the subcontinent, and that does include a fair number of Bangladeshis as well. Whether there was a domestic spillover from the Bangladesh issues and the events that we are witnessing there is not very clear. It does seem to be a part of a wider Muslim unhappiness with the Labour Party and the Labour government over its Gaza policy that seemed to explain some of the anger that we have seen on the streets here that was joined by others than the Roma and the Romanians.
What is the extent of damage behind you? I know you've got a busy day at hand, a lot of ground to cover, but how extensive is the damage?
Well, we've just seen here the burnt out remains of the double-decker being cleared away. They've just brought a crane in and they've sort of piled up the remains onto a truck to take it away. They are now engaged in cleaning the place and trying to erase traces of this violence. But of course, the erasure is not going to be as complete in people's minds and in their experiences, because this has been very unsettling to the entire community here. And their best hope is that it should be a wake-up call for the authorities to take some steps to correct the imbalance in opportunities and income that is loaded very heavily against people here.
Now the immigrant issue comes up again, and what's on display should also set the alarm bells ringing at different levels. Sanjay Suri, thank you very much. Always a pleasure speaking with you. Joining us now, Pandit Satish Sharma and Adit Kothari, a founding member of the Indic Society. My namaste to you gentlemen, connecting after a while. Good to see you on the right stand. How would you analyze what's played out, Pandit Satish Sharma?
Namaskar Ji Anand, indeed. A pleasure to connect with you after such a long time. I have a slightly different read to what your previous contributor mentioned. Firstly, this red herring about deprivation. I've heard it so many times, but there are many communities in this country who are living in equally deprived conditions, and they do not resort to such criminality on the flimsiest of reasons. So although that is a regular card that's played, I don't think that it's actually a genuine, authentic one. But there is a deeper problem. Firstly, I think we should be clear, these were not communal riots. So let's put that to one side. Many commentators have been indicating that, but these were not communal. But there is a darker and a deeper trend that is now emerging. If you have a think back to a few years ago when the BLM movement came into the United Kingdom, what we saw was the allegations of violence and criminality in another country triggering extraordinary levels of criminality in this country. We saw it with the BLM movement. We've seen it with the Khalistanis and their allegations in Punjab. We have seen it with many other pseudo claims. We have seen it most recently with Gaza. But what we are seeing is the appropriation of some sort of a claim and then using that to justify criminality. And that is a deeply worrying thing. The problem for the Labour Party is that they gathered all of these various disparate groups together and said, come to us, come into our fold, and we will represent you. And in many cases, what's happened now is that the energy of hatred has become too close to the surface. And once you start to leverage hatred and violence for political gain, it's something has been released from Pandora's box. And we are seeing that it's going to be very, very difficult to put back into the Pandora's box. The other worry, you mentioned Bangladesh over in East London. We have now exactly the same toolkit being played out. Claims of violence in a different nation, translating into acts of criminality on the streets of London. That's the larger problem that the British police force and the authorities have to deal with. It's almost as though we're approaching, or the United Kingdom is approaching its Shaheen Bagh moment. You know, a tenuous complaint, but ramped up civil disorder. The other problem to this particular phenomenon is two-tier policing. The indigenous community are becoming unbelievably worried that there is now openly and undisputably two-tier policing going on. There is a level of discrimination. It's almost as though that famous principle that lady jurisprudence is blindfolded so that she can apply law without fear or favor. That blindfold is now, it's been lifted, so that in the case of certain communities who are very expert at leveraging victimhood in order to inflict criminality, suddenly the application of the law is different. We saw this in Leicester only in 2022. There are so many acts, there are so many provisions in law which the authorities could leverage to respond to this level of criminality, but they only respond very firmly with the indigenous community. And this is, I think, going to be the bigger problem for us.
Adit, your thoughts? You agree, disagree with Pandit Satish Sharma?
It's going to be really tough for me to disagree with Panditji. I mean, it's after he's actually spoken, there is also very little that remains for anybody else to actually contribute. So I'm going to try my best to try.
First, I have first movers advantage.
Absolutely.
As they say.
But Anandji, like Panditji essentially pointed out, the two-tier policing system, that is something brazenly admissible. So I was speaking to a friend earlier today, and he mentioned to me that had this been football hooligans, causing this sort of a anarchy, this sort of a feral and ferocious anarchy on the streets of London or anywhere in the United Kingdom, you would have immediately seen the riot police come down. That is what not happened in Leeds, which is what I think all of us need to be cognizant of, because somewhere or the other the hostage politics is being played up really well by the so-called immigrants. And I'm an immigrant into this country, and I have absolutely nothing against immigration. What I have against is the two-tier kind of immigration policy that Britain essentially demonstrates, where you essentially have one set of immigrants who come through the correct checks and balances, who go through all of the procedures, and then you have the other ones who come through, I would say dodgy means, and then, they essentially take the system to hostage. They hate everything that British society, civil society stands for. They have a strong disdain for police. They have a strong disdain for law and order, and that is what we are seeing. We saw the Roma family, where the children were essentially taken away by the social services. That was the tinderbox to the anarchy. But what came down after that was a complete mishmash of all ethnic communities coming into the streets of Leeds and playing foul against the system, against the police themselves, causing immense riot on the streets and civil disorder on the streets of Leeds.
You talked about two-tier immigration, and Pandit Satish Sharma spoke about two-tier policing. What is two-tier policing? Just expand a little on that. Why would you say that's happening? Because this has been mentioned even in reports. This has been mentioned even by locals, and there is some shock that's been seen also from the policymakers and those in government at the display, the violent display that's been seen on the streets. This is anarchy. So that's one part of the question. The second part is, do you have reasons to believe that this could not perhaps be spontaneous? Is there a certain loose organization to what was manifest? Adit and then Pandit Satish Sharma. So you go first this time, Adit.
Thanks. So I think from a two-tier policing system, I think we're very clear. Like I mentioned, if there were football hooligans who were creating some sort of chaos in the streets of the United Kingdom, the riot police would have been there and would have been taking control. The right to police and the right to violence has to remain with the state. It cannot be dispersed to the hands of the civilians, which is what is happening in Leeds, or which is what we saw in the case of Leicester in 2022, which is where our community has a massive problem with. We tried to raise this up with the polity, with the academia, with the intelligentsia in Britain, but nobody came out to listen to us, and that is what I think Panditji tried to outline as well. Right. So that's the two-tier policing aspect of it. Sorry, I missed out the second question, Anandji.
Do you have reasons to believe that this may not all have been spontaneous? Is there a loose organizing to this anarchy?
I don't think there's loose organization or any sort of orchestrating to this anarchy. I think it was pretty spontaneous from that perspective. There is a lot of angst. There is a lot of frustration with the British polity within certain diasporas and certain ethnicities in Britain with regards to what politics is being played out in the Middle East, for example. And that is somewhere the fault of the British polity as well, because the subcontinental politics or the politics of Israel and Gaza should not become the politics of Britain. British civilians and the British politicians need to focus on British polity and British issues largely. I mean, there are, some of the issues may just spill over, but it doesn't reprimand this sort of a action which we see outside Trafalgar Square or which we see outside the Israeli embassy, etc., etc. So that is where I think that is a pure failure of the British polity. Anarchy.
Right. Pandit Satish Sharma?
Gee, if I can add, something Sanjayji said was that Nigel Farage, who is deemed to be right of right, I think that's actually being proven to be a trope. He has been on the nail, he has been right on too many occasions. His finger is very much on the pulse, but in this case, I think his interpretation is actually shallow. It's not the politics of the subcontinent. What we are seeing is a two-tier policing system, and the two tiers are simply this. There are groups of people who agree to policing by consent. They agree that they are participants in this society. They are contributing to the well-being of everybody in this society. And then there's a second group who, on the basis of their actions, don't seem to have any allegiance to this nation, to this society, and to the indigenous people of these islands. They seem to dance to the tune of priorities and values and brotherhoods which are pan-national. They are not the actions of people in this country. These responses, the immediate leap to be able to light fires, to roll police cars over, this is totally alien to this society. It's a shock, and we are just seeing across the water in Ireland exactly the same two-tier policing now being put forward. We have seen people such as Nigel Farage are now becoming mainstream because they are with the pulse of the public. We're going to see Tommy Robinson becoming even more mainstream.
But these instances have been witnessed all around the United Kingdom, all across Europe. It was there in France to be witnessed. It was there in Sweden. It's there in Denmark. There are so many other nations where this has happened. And has UK thought that it will not happen there on their streets? Or even last year, Leicester, were there no lessons learned? And if there are increasingly many who believe that there is two-tier policing and this is something which is going to be a bane and it's going to hurt society, British society, something needs to be done. But then perhaps Europe is waking up to some hard realities. What they used to talk about, watching in the distance over across on another continent, it's all coming very, very closer home to them. That's what's happening.
Definitely.
Pandit Satish Sharma and Adit Kothari, always a pleasure speaking with you, gents. Thank you very, very much. Namaste.
Jai Shri Ram.
With that, it's a wrap of this edition of The Right Stand. Brass Tacks up next. Stay with us. Namaste.